Well, hello, Glue Troopers. Max and Max's Models here. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's get to it. We start today's adventure with a trip to Hurricane Hobbies to get a bunch of paints for several ongoing projects. And while I was there, I found this Element Tools has this carving guide tape. And apparently, it comes between 4 and 10 millimeters. And you lay it down, it has a lot of tick marks in it, has a certain amount of thickness to it so that you can use it as a guide for an X-Acto knife. Well, that was different. Didn't get any because I didn't think I needed any, but it's the small stuff so it can go around corners and stuff. And anyway, it's an interesting concept, just provides you with a cutting edge. And I looked at a few little displays they had. Also, Brett had another build. I think he did this for someone else, and it's B-58 Hustler, for those who didn't know, and his usual magnificent work. So I get to the Tarbis, I inventory everything that's in the Jupiter 2, the Mobius Jupiter 2, and start getting everything packed up so I can start studying all of the material. And I found out it has two of these fusion reactor pieces that go in, which of course means there's going to be one you don't need. And I was thinking that might really look good in the C57D. I'll have to cut it up to make it work, but I did some test work with it, and it's got some potential promise. Not actually the right number of blades. Speaking of that, I got the LEDs for the engine painted red with the clear red. They still appear a little white, as I figured they were, just because they're so bright, but there's potential here, and it's looking good so far. Also got to work on the Skyraider, pre-painting a lot of stuff because I really wanted to get a lot of this pre-painted because it's going to be just too awkward to try and get to it after the plane's done. And to give myself something to relax with in between, I decided to go ahead and build that little French Caravel from Lindbergh. This was probably a 69-cent kit back in the day. Bear in mind, this is about a 1965 boxing. It was just something to do between other things. Also, I had this tool show up I got from Amazon. It's a little electronic sander. It's great for getting little nooks and crannies. Comes with 8 different tips on it and little sanding pads, stick-on pads for each one. Steve over at Steve's Model Mania had recommended it, so I went ahead and got one. They're about $44 on Amazon. And so far it seems to work really well. You can get a lot of places. It does not have a curved one. It has a convex one, but not a concave one, because I guess they figure when you normally sand things, you have a naturally concave shape in your hand, but it's got just about every other shape. Little word to the wise. The Amazon people said, hey, you want Prime for free? And without thinking about it, like they advertise as free shipping, which it was, but that's to sneak into signing up for Amazon Prime. So watch that. Anyway, I went ahead and tried the LEDs after I had painted them clear red, and I put in that fusion reactor piece from the Mobius Jupiter 2. Fit like a glove. It's not technically deep enough, and it has more sections, but it's still, it's a drop-in piece. I might or might not use it. I got 2 of them. One, I'm only going to use one on the Jupiter, so it kind of sounds like the styrene universe is talking to me, but we'll see. Of course, could also, but you know what? I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. There's a half dozen different things I could do we've talked about. So, got to work on the Skyraider, painting, pre-painting, and it was pretty straightforward. The Navy scheme is mostly just AS16 and AS20, I believe it is, and some AS12 silver, which I'll be doing later. And that's going together. And again, playing around with the little Caravel in between. So far, the Skyraider hasn't really given me any boogeyman. I've been using a pencil to do some of the detailing. I know a lot of people like to use that line wash, but I find a pencil does just as good. You have a little more control. But when you do lose control, that graphite smudge can be hard to get off. So a little 8-piece Caravel went together pretty well without any real arguments, just a little sanding. But unfortunately, the decals were in pretty bad shape. And I was, to be honest, as old as they are, I'm surprised I was able to use them at all. But I was like, nah, it's nice, but I'm stripping this thing and starting over. So I'm just going to go find some decals and make up something. Of course, I'm going back and forth between the models as one needs to harden and one needs to dry. I did some test fitting on the Skyraider. Everything's looking good so far. Typical of Vietnam-era Navy aircraft, they're primarily sort of a gold gray, and the control surfaces on the top are essentially insignia white, black glare shield. Not a whole lot out of the ordinary. Fortunately, pretty easy to mark off. Probably one of the easiest kits to mask off in that regard. So I found some decals in my spares box and started playing around. I actually had the decals from a larger scale Comet, and the Comet and the Caravel have the exact same cockpit. The French actually bought the rights to the designs to the Comet cockpit to save them from having to design one for their Caravel. And the Comet was a little bigger, but I was like, you know what? I can cut them to scale. And because the ones that came with were actually a little too long, I wasn't going to get too worried about it. This is just a little fun build. Once I got some decals on there that looked halfway decent, I was like, it's kind of like a kid in art class. He just starts adding stuff to it. You start, let's pimp my ride. And you start finding what decals work and couple it up with all kinds of, because they're all out of your spares box. Most of them will never get used. And those are too big, those are too small. I don't like that color pattern, blah, 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 blah. Just having a good time. And I was like, maybe it's in some charter outfit. And then I started thinking to myself, every airline needs a name. Do I have any decals that have a name that isn't the name of an airplane? And the Surfshark, I still had some of the decals from, and I was thinking, oh, this is too good. I'd already put those curved stripes on the tail, and they look a little like shark fins, and I was like, and I'm in Florida, it's like, oh, this is just goes together too well. Florida's least favorite airline, shark. And I did one side one way and one side another, just playing around with it. I wound up spending entirely too much time with this thing, so it's just like, it's playing, it's having fun. I was having a good time, let my imagination fly. And like a kid with a finger painting set. And then I was back to work. Have the dome for the C-57D put together, but I had to start trimming it off and putting and sanding. So I'm going to let that harden overnight. Tomorrow I'm going to really get into the sanding. And then hopefully we'll get that primed and painted and on there. Then I got to get that edge painted because the lip is a dark gray. And then I have to figure out what exactly I want to do with the engine. I got to start experimenting with that. Putting the red paint on the LEDs helps a lot. It definitely gives it more of the right look, but it's not in and of itself what we're looking for. I don't think so. Anyway, you know what? It's a hobby. Let's have some fun with it. Also, I've been playing around in the evenings, writing more songs for the channel, so perhaps I'll inflict another one of my infamous music videos on you. Because I can. Otherwise, that's the end of this video, and you might want to click off now. You guys take care of yourselves. We'll talk at you later. And as always, model on.
Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet Star Cruiser looks like it died. The Millennium Falcon looks like I pimped my ride. My Star Trek ship's got a tilted nacelle. The saucer section's gone straight to hell. Robot from Lost in Space is laughing at me. The whole shuttlecraft is stuck on my knee. Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet's testing my grace. Lost in my work on Lost in Space. Why do the lights flicker? Why won't they glow? I soldered and taped, but the power won't flow. Captain Kirk would never deal with this mess. I think I'm losing my model builder finesse. Skywalker's X-Wing sags, no matter how hard I try. I glued it back on, now it looks like a Y. The Jupiter 2 looks like a big tater chip. I'll use the Death Star as a bowl for some dip.